If you're like me and you are majorly obsessed with When the Phone Rings, you're probably know the news by now that it will not be airing new episodes this week. The day I'm filming this is December 7th. So, as far as I know, it will return next week, the following week. But you might want to watch something in the meantime to kind of scratch that itch a little bit. So, I have some recommendations. I'm Monique. I am the host of Off by Purple Art podcast, where I talk about K-dramas, C-dramas, BTS, and so much more. I have a few recommendations. I'm going to start off with the thrillers. I think right off the bat, Perfect Revenge Marriage. If you have not watched this K-drama, I don't know what you're doing with your life. I think it fits right into the theme of When the Phone Rings. And Perfect Revenge Marriage does have similarities to Marry My Husband, which aired earlier this year, but it does differ in a way. The main lead in this story, the female lead, she is married, her husband's a dip, her family is wickedly cruel, and she is basically getting walked all over until she finds out that her actual husband actually is in love with her sister. Oh yeah, in love with her sister. The family delights in using her and secretly talk so much shit behind her back. She's devastated. She runs away from them all and then ends up in a disasterly accident, just completely sideswiped. And then suddenly she wakes up like it was all a dream. And then it turns out that she has gone back into time just before she is to be engaged to her future husband. Now, what choices is she going to make going forward? And as you can hear in the title, there is definitely some cold ass revenge. It is a good show, about 12 eps. It was a fun ride. Very easy to digest. I think it would probably be the best palate cleanser right now when you're waiting for When the Phone Rings. On the same vein, Marry My Husband is also a thriller, very similarly themed. Only major difference with this, there's less of the supernatural-ish kind of element in this show, and I think in some ways it's a little bit darker in tone, but Marry My Husband, which also comes from a manhwa, just like Perfect Revenge Marriage, it has the main female lead character. She has a terminal illness. Her husband is a POS, a real piece of work, and one day when she discovers that her treatments at the hospital are not being covered by pay, which she thought her husband would be covering, she goes home to discover what's happening and then sees that her current husband is cheating on her, having an extramarital affair with her best friend. Things go drastically sideways, and she is now plunged back into time, and now she needs to make different choices now going forward. The revenge is a lot more layered in this show, and unlike the previous show, there is a lot of consequences for the female lead, at least seemingly so, when things are altered in the timeline. So all the disastrous things that happened to the female lead in the first timeline, it essentially still has to happen in the new life that she wakes up to. So she has to find a way so that her fatal fate is not inflicted onto her. It is a very addictive show. Marry My Husband had 16 episodes. I actually have a very extensive playlist just talking about my experience watching Marry My Husband, and I actually have a podcast episode about Perfect Marriage Revenge as well. So they're two very great shows right off the bat. I would be shocked if you're watching and or listening to this podcast, you haven't tried either one of them. But you haven't, and you love When the Phone Rings, let's go. Hurry up. Well, what are you doing? I think another thriller that a lot of us should check out is The Trunk. This is currently airing, I believe, on Netflix. I don't have a lot of information about it because I myself am just going to get started getting into it, but I've heard amazing things about The Trunk. It is 8 episodes, so very easy to binge. It is definitely a thriller, and I also hear that the main plot is that is a contract marriage between the two leads. Gong Yu is in the show, and I'm already signed up for it. Very mysterious, very eerie. I hear amazing things, and I also hear that the chemistry for the leads is absolute fire. So I think The Trunk is also a show that you should pick up if you genuinely want a nice little mystery to kind of nibble on as we wait for when the phone rings. Now, kind of shifting gears a little bit, going into some more K-dramas that are a little bit more on the romance cutesy side. So you don't necessarily need a thriller to match exactly the tone of what we're all missing out on, but you still want a show that is engrossing and you can enjoy yourself, and it's a little bit of a layered storyline. I would present to you Brewing Love. First off, right at bat, I actually have a recent podcast episode about Brewing Love. A very brief synopsis is that the female lead, she has her own company, her own brewing company specializing in beer. Her branch, unfortunately, is being threatened to shut down in Busan. So the lead hand for the company that she works for essentially tells her, you need to scout out this brewmaster and bring him into the fold. We need new products, something fresh that's going to excite the market. If you can do it, we will save your branch. If you can't do it, kiss that branch, bye-bye. And so the female lead now has her mission to get this brewmaster into her company. But he is very, very mysterious, seems to have a lot of walls around him, but yet also weirdly refers to himself as an empath. It is a very kooky show. The first couple of episodes, I won't lie, are a little bit rough, but they do set the groundwork for the story. And as you get into the show more and more, you're going to be extremely charmed by the main leads. Even the second lead couple as well also bring a lot of chemistry, a lot of charm. The show is definitely more slice of life, comfort, healing drama, but I do really enjoy it, and I think is a show that deserves a little bit more, even though I do hear more people talking about it, and also has one of my favorite actresses in it as well. But I think overall it is a nice palate cleanser, and it's something to at least consider in the meantime. Another romance drama that I'm actually going to have a dedicated podcast to is Love My Enemy, that is currently airing as well. This is an enemies to lovers story and academic rivals to lovers story as well. And I really do love academic rivals to lovers. It has the POV of both the male and the female lead, and the show kind of goes back and forth between when they were first in love with their incredibly beautiful puppy love relationship as teenagers, and it also shows them as adults and they're at their bitter ends towards one another, completely filled with animosity towards one another, and you as a viewer are slowly kind of being fed pieces of their history to figure out how they became to be the sworn enemies that they are now in adulthood, and you get to see their love story really unfold in the most quirky and weird ways. It has like Romeo and Juliet classic beats to it. There's like the warring families, both the leads, their grandfathers are bitter arch nemesis, and that's been passed down to the kids. Both, I think, lead couples have good chemistry, but I will say the teenage version of the main leads is really where the show gets compelling. You get to see them as academic rivals as first, you get to see the sprinklings of enemies to lovers, and then you get to see them fall in love and then have the most soul-crushing heartbreak. But it's actually really beautifully done, and the younger actors, they have so much jam-packed chemistry. It is the perfect recipe of yearning. As adults, I think they have good chemistry, but definitely as adults, they lean more into the more comedic aspects of their rivalry. And I think both actors do an amazing job with physical comedy on screen. But overall, there's about 5 episodes out right now, and I think the show is actually a lot of fun. And it does have, you know, its spiciness here and there, but it's just generally a fun time. And I really do think that the younger cast, particularly the actors that play the teenage versions of the main leads, are doing such a great job. And they actually do get quite a bit of story time. They get a lot of screen time. So you can delve into both the past and the future and have a good time. So I think right off the bat, these shows are going to be amazing for you just if you're waiting for the next episode of When the Phone Rings. If none of this helps, then by God, just go back and rewatch the previous 4 episodes like I've been doing and carry on. But I think these shows are worth checking out. And if you're like me and you love When the Phone Rings, don't worry, it will come back, at least for next week. And I do believe that the show will finish airing next year around January 4th. So we're not going to have huge gaps of waiting time for the show. But it's just a fun ride. I'm absolutely going to continue doing podcast episodes about When the Phone Rings exclusively because I am that locked in, let me tell you. But I am watching other stuff too. I am always watching stuff. Let me know down below if you're watching the video format of this podcast. Do you have any recommendations of shows that we can watch right now in the meantime? What are your thoughts about the shows I've mentioned? Have you had them on your watch list? Have you been hesitant to jump into any of them? I think you should give them a shot. I think they are really good. If you're listening via Spotify or Apple Podcasts, love you, appreciate you, and feel free to interact with those platforms as well. I want to know your thoughts. Till the next episode. Bye.